right, we'll call this meeting to order. And our new and approved agenda, this work session will go no later than 10 p.m. Hopefully try. We'll see. All right, Steve, you want to take us through the updated Q's and A's?
Sure, and you don't have to tell me how much detail you want. One of the questions that was asked was the less than 2 miles, greater than 2 miles. This was the point in the meeting last week, where we discovered that it looked like there was a data error. So hopefully these numbers look a little better to you as you go through them. They actually add up to the number of students that should be in each of the schools. So I'll just stop on this one momentarily and remind you, as we talked about last week, this map will show you all of the yellow dots represent students that are either students, and then this map represents those that are within 2 miles. So you can see, for instance, over here some dots on this map, not on this map. That's because those are not within 2 miles. Those numbers are above and below the map, so 373 total, 306 within 2, 67 outside. I scroll back up here, you see those same numbers right here.
So that 67 number is the number of people who go to Alexander who are legally entitled to busing.
Correct. Yep. So we've got that for all the schools. There was a question last time, it was actually a typo on my part, but it is plus or minus 3 miles at the high school level. I'm just going to zip down. There we go. So this, I believe, that's sorry.
Is it considered print?
So there's our last one, which is West High. Again, brown dots kids at West. Goes inside the 3 mile loop there. Maps on a different scale, just to remind you of that. So you've got 1981 in the school, 832 inside there, so 1149 eligible for busing. So questions on the 2 and 3 mile maps?
Well, Chris said over 2 miles is busing, but there could be special ed or...
Sure, and maybe actually things. Maybe just one reminder, we talked about this last time. I'm going to go back up to an elementary map. Just take it up a little higher. Just a reminder, the methodology that Guide K-12 uses for drawing their map is different than the spider maps or the finger maps that we have that are used by Versatrans. So Versatrans starts at the school, drives out a road to 2 miles. So that's why that map, it does not have a boundary around it, but simply has all those streets that go out and marked in half mile, mile and a half, 2 mile. When Guide K-12 does it, it goes out to 2 miles on this road and 2 miles on this road and draws a line in between. And 2 miles on this road, 2 miles on this road and draws a line in between. Therefore, they can draw a polygon around it. But remember that one of the things we talked about is in some cases, you may have an area that falls inside that polygon, but the road comes from outside the polygon. And so those kids actually aren't within 2 miles. So the analogy I used last week was the numbers that we have here. It's like horseshoes. We may not be around the stake, but we're in the pit. So the numbers are very close, but they may be off a little bit. Chris, as you mentioned, we've got some other kids that are in district-directed programs. So we've said you go here. You may be inside or outside that 2 mile. If you're not in your home attendance zone, we're busing those kids. So there are some anomalies on here. And what this does is provide us a very good approximation, but not absolute accurate numbers.
But that number at least is the number of students roughly who are entitled to a bus, not necessarily the number who sign up to ride the bus.
Sure. Yeah, that's exactly right. So in this case, we got Weber. We've got about 72 kids that live outside the 2 mile zone. But again, I would remind you in Weber, we've got the Pheasant Ridge kids that live inside the 2 mile zone, and we're busing them. So not all the kids that live inside are not bused.
I'm just saying, so for example, Kirkwood and Wood, the entire boundary is within 2 miles.
Yep, so there's Wood.
But you still would have 22 kids outside the 2 miles.
Right.
That's
And
awesome.
now those 22 kids may be kids that lived inside the Wood Elementary attendance area last year, moved outside the attendance area this year, chose to remain at Wood, and their parents are transporting them. So they live outside 2 miles, but we're not busing them either.
All right, and for example, Hoover, even though everybody pretty much lives within the 2 miles, you got a special ed bus.
Sure.
Bring
Yep.
some kids in. So-
Yep. Wickham's another good example of that.
Steve, how much transportation is done with homeless or formerly homeless kids?
Quite a bit. Remember, if you are a student that comes to the district as a homeless youth, you wind up being placed somewhere in the community, and that's usually where you start going to school. Now, once they find housing for you and they move you into something more permanent, that likely is outside of the area of the attendance zone for where you were. For instance, if you were at Shelter House. And the McKinney-Vento Act, which is a federal act, requires that if you are then placed outside of that initial attendance area, then you have the opportunity to stay there. Conversely, let's say you live in a house and you're in the Penn attendance area and you become homeless, and you now relocate somewhere else, you also have the right to continue to attend Penn. Unlike voluntary transfer, where we then shift that burden of transportation to the parents, if you're homeless, that burden for transportation is ours as a school district, and so we transport students. That number changes on a regular basis, oftentimes because as parents become more permanent in their neighborhood, they frequently decide, rather than sending my kid over there, I want my kid to go to school with the neighbor children, and so they move them. So our numbers literally change on a week-to-week basis.
And how many of our schools are impacted by that?
Oh, almost all of our schools are impacted, either as senders or receivers.
Kind of on that note, there was a discussion I was listening in on concerning these apartments that are getting sold
Mhm.
and transferring, and the city is kind of directing those families to the shelter house, the ones that are in the most need. Have you gotten any kind of ideas on the numbers or anything with that yet?
Not yet. One of the things that we heard initially was that everyone was going to have to be out and was going to have to be tomorrow. That's loosened up a little bit. They've given them a little bit more room to stay. We encouraged at least May 25th so that the kids would have a chance to finish school and not to move families before that. One of the things we're finding though is that families who can find someplace to go are choosing to go. They don't want to wait till the last minute. Affordable housing is very hard to find. If you find it now, you take it. And so we're dealing with that too. The numbers have changed as we've gone through it, from initially everyone to then backed off, but now some transition in between as some families are choosing to move.
My understanding about the shelter house piece is that the city is providing more funding to help assist with rapid rehousing.
Right.
That's my understanding of it,
Yep.
not that they were suggested that that was a potential location from the actual owners, but the city was saying that they were working with Crisis Center and Shelter House to specifically say that this is a fund that we're setting up that you can go through them to be able to get housing, which is different than
Right, then housing
them
them
being,
themselves.
going there and living there in Shelter House as homeless children and then getting different services.
And part of the idea was to try to get some of those families on month to month at Rose Oaks, so that then they could use the rapid rehousing to find something permanent. All right, so those are the 2 mile maps. And then the next set of maps that you see in there, let me get below that, are building block maps. I tried to go kind of as you read, west to east, north to south type of thing, so there's maybe some logic. So I moved some of them around just so hopefully it flows a little bit better. So here you've got a building block request from Horn Elementary School. Here's another one from Twain. This is the West Island. This is the North Island for Man. By the way, I should stop for just a minute and say for each of these building blocks, I have all students in there. One of the concerns from an earlier iteration, I was literally just cutting and pasting the data, and the elementaries, junior highs, and high schools were not together because it was alpha sorted. So I've gone through each of them now, and they actually have the elementaries first, then the junior highs, then the high schools, so you can at least see them together. So in this case, in that man block, there's 33 high school kids. There are 27 junior high kids, then the remaining kids are elementary kids. So it's a little bit easier to do the math there.
Can I ask a quick question about that one?
Yeah.
The area east of Dubuque Street, south of Interstate 80.
East of Dubuque. South.
right there, bingo.
Yep.
It's hard for me to tell, do we know what the student population is in that area?
Nope, but I can easily pull that up.
I,
for you.
I will send more official request.
Perfect, yep, I can definitely do that. This next one is a great example, so, before I steal the thunder, so here's a request to take a look at the Rose Oaks apartment. Notice that there are only 2 dots in there, yet there are 63 kids. That's because they have one address that mail gets sent to, and then, so that's the address that they register under. You'll notice that there's a dot out here. Somewhere there's a geocoding error in there somewhere, and so we are working with Guide K-12 to fix this. So I had to make sure to draw the box not only to include the mail stop, but also for whatever reason these folks which are coded out onto Highway 6. We think it's the way they've entered their own addresses into Power School that's pulling them out there. So that's something we're working on fixing with Guide K-12. Saddlebrook. Then after that, there were some compilations that were suggested. The format I used for this, so this is a good one to take a look at. Can we draw a building block compilation for Grant Elementary School? Certainly. This one has 476 kids in it. How did I draw that? Things that were provided to me. This comes from the Johnson County Property Viewer. This made it really easy because it goes right through the back of the plat maps. When I zoom into the tightest level on here, which is way up here, I actually can see the plats on Guide K-12 underlying the colors, especially when the colors are the right colors, they're easier to see. So I can run that just like I did on this one, right through the plat lines. And then I got lots of Sharpie maps sent to me, so I use those then to build a map that looks as much like it as I can. So hopefully, when you look at this, it should look as close to identical to that as possible. Now I know people have already pointed out a couple of errors. I cut a corner here, or added something there, so I've got a list of some revisions that need to be made for next time.
Just go to the second Sharpie.
This one?
No, one more.
One more.
So when Steve, when you did this point, obviously it's assuming we're up here somewhere.
Yep.
But if we're down here somewhere, I'm actually convinced the further south in Scandal, the better.
Oh, for the location of the school?
For walkability.
Yeah, so this, again, so these represent where schools will be when we, earlier in the process, and one of the things that we have to do is work with Guide K-12 to get some new locations. One of the things that's on our agenda for the next board meeting is to talk about the property swap. So initially, our property was out here where the hand is, not touch things. Well, this is all of our property here, technically. The high school is about right there right now, so we're going to have a new entry point there. We don't have an entry point here yet, so we'll have to have them move those blocks for us so that they more accurately represent where the schools are.
But it's just, we talked this a little last time, but almost, and if you, that Johnson County Viewer, almost all these drives out here are private drives. So I think you're going to be surprised how far the walkability zone goes.
Yeah.
Do we know from the plat maps or anything where the roads are gonna be
In the development?
in that, yeah?
Yeah, we've got a map now that went to Coralville, to the city council, with a preliminary plat in it that shows, the city of Coralville has been working for a long time to say, how does Forever Green trace through here and intersect? So we know how Forever Green comes through here and then comes over to connect with Dubuque, so we'll be able to show you that.
So if we can get a copy,
Yeah, it's out,
I sent it to you on email.
As far as the smaller roads that'll be in there that people will live on,
right, those are in there too. That was in the
Wow.
original plat that the developer submitted to Coralville for the initial consideration. Brian's got it right there. Brian, can you hold that up?
Yeah.
You got the data?
I can find the date of the email,
Okay.
this is the attachment.
I want to say that the Coralville City Council meeting was 2 weeks ago Tuesday? Three weeks ago?
I know I was in Des Moines, so it would have been about 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
So this goes, there you go.
Just about the right side. Let me shrink it a little bit.
No, it's fine. It's just, that's where it goes. So you have roads coming up the bottom here that,
Yep.
and the North Liberty has got a couple of subdivisions are going to be.
One here,
Yeah.
one here that are already in process. Been platted and moving forward with infrastructure development.
And just while we're on this, and this is what Ryan said, I mean, they just spent a boatload of money on sewers in this area, right? So that's where their growth is. If you go back up top, there's only about 80 acres of undeveloped area up here that has sewer capacity, otherwise they're going to have to put sewer capacity in. And the other thing you notice, if they go up 965, it's not even us, right? It's Clear Creek.
Right.
Yep.
So,
Then, again, here's a building block for Penn with 919 kids. You can see a big chunk of them as secondary students down here. Built off this map right here.
if you could, just go back, so there's, go back here.
Sorry?
So there's 584 elementary kids at Penn in this scenario versus a capacity of 587.
Right.
So it's pretty full, and the line is drawn at about the 2 mile. There may be a couple tweaks we could make on that northern edge,
Yep, that's down here.
but the school's full.
Yep.
So unless you start moving kids from like Penn to Gardner or something, the school's full with people within 2 miles.
You're talking about students today in that area, right? 4
Yeah.
years from now, it's gonna be a bigger number.
Yeah, well, it's pretty, not really, because again, if you talk to Brian, their growth's gonna be down this way. If you think about this area, this is an industrial park. If you look at the areas in here, it's pretty well developed. There's not a lot of green space in there. There's gonna be a lot of green space if we go to Gardner's. There will be green space definitely down here or over here. That's where Gardner or Grant would need to pick it up. Which is why I gave you this Sharpie. That's why I moved this a little further over to accommodate the growth that goes down to Butte Street. So on this one, Gardner, just before you, Gardner's at like 502, which isn't bad. The capacity's 445. And it's gonna go to 620
Yeah.
eventually. But then there's a lot of development area there with sewers and with everything else, right? So,
This one is Van Allen. So it encompasses most of the current Van Allen. You can see that there's a piece missing over here and then down here and wrapped around.
so there's 496 in this one versus a capacity of 564, so there's a little bit of growth opportunity still in some of the green space.
Here's Wickham. So it takes out this northern piece and adds this western piece.
413 kids versus a capacity of 428.
This is Lincoln. And this includes part of Horn, part of Borlaug, part of Man, and the Manville Heights section of Lincoln.
So this one was interesting because it was 198 kids versus a capacity of 187. Pretty close. I think less than today.
So it has Vinsel in it?
Yes.
Peninsula and Forest View.
But it's the west side of
West of Butte.
Dubuque.
Not including the area that I was just asking.
Not including, it's including, something's in there.
It is
Now this
not.
piece, I
Oh,
think, is
because
what
you
he's
were
talking about.
looking at that now, okay, sure.
That one's pretty close to capacity.
That's what I.
Then we've got Man, which includes a little bit of Longfellow down here and the current Hoover attendance area here. That, just FYI for you, that's where we're sitting right now.
That was 187 versus capacity of 242.
Anybody live here that we don't know about?
Not that I'm aware of,
Okay,
although
so
we did
we're
have
all in school together.
squatters at the old building, so. Longfellow. So this again, your core Longfellow area here, obviously not including the island, and then part of Hoover, going over to First Ave.
This was 282 kids versus capacity of 258. If you find 30 kids that go to Man, it might be perfect. It's close.
By the way, you may notice that some of these maps look familiar, so I made sure to include the map after each of the Guide K-12 ones, so you know what the source material was. So this is Longfellow. Wait a minute, did I just do Longfellow?
Okay, the
Yeah, it's
number of
different.
students over capacity at Longfellow.
Oh, I'm sorry, there's two versions of Longfellow.
Yeah.
So that's why you have it in here twice, so here's one. This map's gonna look a little bit different. This includes all of Longfellow up there, part of Hoover down here.
Just
Look
maybe
back.
like just
That comes with this map.
The difference is in the purple zone.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're mistaken this one.
And the
too.
slice at the top. What's that?
What I'm seeing on this one is the number of students that you are over capacity at Longfellow looks pretty much equal to the number you are taking from Hoover and put there.
No, this is
Am I
26, I don't know,
261.
261 versus capacity at 258, basically. right.
Oh, okay. Well, how about the previous one? Because I'm kind of wondering about it. I mean, right now, if you take the students who are out of the island, out of Longfellow, Longfellow's almost exactly at its capacity number. So we're taking them out. Where are we getting this extra room to put Hoover students?
I don't know, the capacity's 258, and this one's only,
There's 202 Longfellow kids in that.
this is 282 in this one.
And this
Now,
one,
if you go back,
261.
207 in that one.
if you go back up just a little bit, just throw something out there. With that particular map, or building block, aggregate, whatever you want to call it,
Compilation.
aggregate compilation of data, building block. You know, where the railroad tracks come up, diagonally separating Twain from Longfellow, those tracks continue to just north of Benton Street there you go, right there. And there's a number of students south of the tracks who are north of Kirkwood Avenue, in that sliver right there, right where the hand is. When we look at the Twain West Island, which is down right in there, I just wonder how, if there's changes with Twain West Island, if that opens up that sliver, the southern sliver of Longfellow, redistricted towards Twain,
Good.
just as dominoes.
Mhm. So there's that second version of Longfellow. Here's one version of Twain, which also includes some Alexander students.
That was almost a mistake.
That was a mistake. That
Sharpie got
I
it.
got overzealous with the Sharpie.
All right, here's one version of Lemmy.
370 versus 350, although we expanded to 476 eventually.
Right. And then here's another version of Lemmy.
This was 405.
We've got one version of Lucas.
413, capacity 381.
381.
And here's another version of Lucas.
I have a question with the Saddlebrook area and where we have that little westward jagged turn there. Is that, where the hand is, would that be considered part of Saddlebrook neighborhood? Right.
That's what?
It's like,
It's right behind you.
Yeah, it's past Paddock Circle when you drive
Yeah,
through
it's
it.
well, actually, that's my house.
well, then I'm asking the right person.
Yeah, but like, it's a new,
Yeah.
it's new houses going up right now.
Yeah.
And it's gonna be full.
It seems to me like it's neither nor.
Right now, it's like 12 houses, but it's
Yep.
got like land for sale everywhere there.
That's
So
what it looked like when I went down.
Yeah.
it will
It'll
expand
fill in
out
pretty
because they're
quick.
buying out the end of the pond right there.
That's what I'll do, no, thank you.
Would it make more sense than?
That's the question, yeah.
Mhm.
Would make more sense?
I mean, that's the school that, that's the closest school to walk to.
Right.
Like, cause for instance, I would have, because you can't drive through the field, and we would have to
You gotta
pass
go up and
Wood.
around.
You have to pass Wood
Yeah,
and
you
then-
gotta take this route.
Yeah, you have to pass Wood, then go up Sycamore,
Yeah.
out to Alexander for those kids.
There's any good natural separations in there? It'd be interesting to talk Wood versus.
It looks like it
versus-
connects here and it connects this.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, I mean, there is no break, like, it's either like,
You
you
kinda
go
gotta
out
just,
to like Highway 6, or you, I mean, like, there
How
is
about
no
just
natural.
conceptually, or conceptually?
you just have to draw it down some backyards.
Yeah, it's through backyards because everything is interconnected, like
Yeah.
Saddlebrook, it's like, there's no street separation, it's like Paddock Circle. And then you're in what they call, whatever, I don't even know the neighborhood I live in, but it's a new name, they changed the name, it was Park One or something.
No
But,
man
like,
land.
yeah, so there's going to be, over time, there will be a street, but that hasn't, it'll be a while before that street.
Yeah,
is
I
actually-
can't get my hand, there we go. There's gonna be a connector that
Yeah,
runs
there's gonna
through
be a
there.
street
They've got
back
it
there.
platted, the city does.
But it's.
Last time I talked to them, I think they said it's like a 3-year window on that before
Yeah.
they get that done. So that'll go through from, you know where Alexander is, and you're going towards Kickers Park.
Yeah.
And you hang a little left there by the apartments, it's gonna go up there and then go up and connect, but that's, they said it might be 3 years out on that.
I guess it'd be Saddlebrook versus Bon Air, right? Really?
Well, yeah, those are separations.
Right.
So you did. Okay.
All right, so here's one version of Wood.
Question, the part that's in yellow,
Right over here, yes.
I think that's a victim of my overzealous Sharpie.
Okay.
I did not intend for the students living that have just become acclimated to being part of the it's because in the spider maps it didn't show the Alexander zone.
Right.
I got a little crazy with the Sharpie on the south border. I apologize for that.
And here's a version of Hoover.
61, isn't
That includes part of Lemmy, part of Lucas. This down here is also part of Lemmy. And then the light green is Longfellow. Then this is a version of the Southeast City High catchment area, which answers these questions. Minus Twain Island, minus Peninsula Forest View, include Alexander, include Manville Heights, includes the Shires and Fairview Knoll, and minus Hills. So this gives you, sorry, I gotta go to the next page here. That's about 1,450 City West kids. There are 82 Tate kids there too. So we've got those disaggregated, but of the kids that are in City and West right now, go up to 1,450. Question was asked, can we do a northwest-west with these? Include south part of Wickham, include Kirkwood, include Twain Island, include Hills. Again, scrolling to the next page gives you about 1,350, 1,360 of the current City and West kids. And can we draw a north-central Liberty map that includes Peninsula Forest View, apartments on the corner of Holiday Road and First Ave, Old Hickory, which is just to the west of those apartments, the north part of Wickham, the north part of Lincoln. And that gives you, of the current kids that are at City and West, it gives you 740. And then that was the Sharpie map that I used for that. Then there's just a whole bunch of questions at the end. Most now are answered. I think I actually have a couple of the other questions answered since I posted this on Sunday, so I will have those answers up and ready. Phil likes this one electronically better because it's hard to read when you see it here, but you can blow it way up electronically so you can actually read it, which is a big plus. But this is the updated one, and Chris, thank you for pointing out some of the errors that were on here on the one that was posted. It was updated in January, but it was not posted to the website with the updated numbers. So some of the formulas were incorrect in the one in January. All right, that in a nutshell, trying to keep you on track. What else can I answer for you from those questions that were asked?
Do you know about the student achievement map?
Yes, I actually, that's one of the questions that I got answered. We thought we were on the positive footing with that. Now we find out that the database that includes all of our student attendance information cannot be uploaded into PowerSchool, so their initial reaction, or up in the Guide K-12, their initial reaction was, sure, if you can get the data to us, we can do it. We can't get a data handshake that will get it into their software right now. So something we're still asking about, but at least right now we can't do that.
What is it you were looking for, though?
Could we take achievement data and heat map it and code it to their GIS data? So we have not gotten that handshake together yet. Not given up, but the initial answer was yes, but, and then the but came through as a no.
Any progress on just either busing maps or at least a list of how many buses go to each school?
That I've just got that today, which I'll get up there. So it looks like a table like this. So I've got I just, this came through this afternoon. So, for instance, you got 5 buses at Coralville Central, 4 at Van Allen, 10 at Southeast, 13 at West, like that. So I've got.
That obviously reflects before we made any discretionary busing cuts. It's our current.
I will have to check. I think this is current number of buses run as of
We
today.
don't know how many buses they're going to run until they figure out the
Right. But I think this is the number of buses running today. So I'll get that piece uploaded too. What's that?
We are gonna get a district map with bus
That,
routes.
we can't, we literally have to, that's another question I got answered today. We can do a map of a bus route, but it is one route at a time. And we would have to generate 300 maps. There is not actually an ability for us to put 300 routes on one map in a way for us to actually be able to see them. So we would have to do 300 separate maps.
Do the Sharpie.
What's that?
Do a Sharpie.
I have to do a Sharpie.
Would they get, can we get an electronic version of it?
That was she literally has to, she explained the process to me, but she can export the data, which will then generate a map, which has a nice directional arrow so you know which way the bus route flows. But that winds up coming out as a single file. And there's no way to write another route on top of it. So we literally would have 300 pages of bus maps to do that.
But would we have access to, if we wanted to check a route and everything like that, have that electronically where we can pull it up and look at it?
We don't have access to that. That we do through Dura. So, well, actually, maybe I'm not sure what you're asking. Are you asking?
Would we be able to source individual route? Would we have access to that file to look at the individual routes?
They don't have access to Versatrans.
Yeah, I was going to say, we don't have access to Versatrans. We have access to the output from it.
Okay.
So I don't think we actually have the ability to get in and do that. I'll have to ask. That's one I don't know the answer to for sure. I think I know the answer, but I'm not positive.
The address list of kids who ride this bus versus kids who ride that bus.
I think we have, just like she was able to generate a table for me, I think she could generate an address list for me.
It's still too many buses to make that really work.
Yeah.
Slightly different color. Slightly.
No, you have them all the same color, and then you just see it's all one color. What spots aren't colored? Exactly.
Chris, can I go through one attachment quick?
Yeah.
I think your topic's a longer one, so
Yeah.
do you mind bringing up the other? Which one? The last attachment.
Point down.
Opportunity. Don't want to go through this in detail. But it was interesting, we spent a lot of time about maximizing walkers, minimizing busing, managed capacity, neighborhood choice. I don't know that this is 100% right, Steve, it's up to you. But 15, 16, we've got 3 or 4 walking schools, I'm not, right? Only about 15%. Going through those. When you look at some of the building blocks, it is possible to probably get over half our schools to walking schools. Just by looking at the 2-mile radius. So when you look at the Gardner map, they were all within 2 miles. Horn was all within 2 miles. We had to move one.
I was just going to pull it down for you.
No, don't. No, we could. But Gardner was all Horn. We had to move a neighborhood to Weber to make that happen. Kirkwood was. Longfellow was within 2 miles. Lucas was. Man's a swing one. It may go back or forth. It depends what we do with Lincoln. So Lincoln and Man kind of flip back and forth. Penn was, Twain was, Van Allen was, Wickham was, Wood was. And these would definitely have buses. But that would be a dramatic increase in the number of walkable schools. And if you just go to the last page, it was pretty amazing. This is just a summary, so just an orientation. Just go to the top here. This was all the neighborhood input, so if you ever want to look at it, first choice, second, third choice. I just put this in based on some of the building blocks that were in there and looked at first, second, third choice. It's just an algorithm. If you go to the bottom, it actually got as high as, in some of the scenarios, there's only 2 neighborhoods we didn't put in one of their top 3 choices. So 84% was their first choice, 95 was second, 97 was the third. So
Well, you can only say that though if you're not looking at the real first choice of the people who are in
yeah, it was 84% first choice.
You count those people as first choice Old Hoover?
Yep.
Oh, okay. I think it's really, I actually think it's really interesting. Like, I just think it's really interesting to think about this walkable school thing. I have a couple questions about it, but I mean, what I like about it is that it's got a theory, right? It's got kind of a theme that it's trying to achieve. And, yeah, it is interesting as an option. Like one of the questions I have about it is, how much of the effect is actually reducing the number of buses, and how much of it is taking all the buses that we have and sending them to a fewer number of schools? You know, I
It's a
mean,
bit of both. It's a bit of both, but it was doing the boundaries with the 2-mile radius in mind. It was one thing. And I think the other interesting thing, and we talked this with Steve, instead of having, how many buses we have at elementary? Let's just say it's 100.
Yeah.
Instead of having 100 go into 20 different elementaries, why not focus them on a few, and you'll be able to optimize. So if half of our schools are walking and half of us, you'll be able to much more optimize the busing, right?
I'm not sure.
Yeah,
Is
well-
that true?
It's just economy of scale. Instead of having lots of small buses going to lots of different schools, you'll be able to
Okay, so you
optimize.
fill the buses. You just,
Yeah, your
well,
capacity
that
really
is true. I mean, I certainly hope we'll run those buses if we open 2 new schools. Either way we do. But I'd be curious to see just how much of a cut in the number of buses that plan generates.
I think it'll be a breakthrough. But I'm just looking at it from the operations management standpoint, all right? Focus your busing in certain areas and you should be able to optimize it.
And really, when we're talking about going to 1552 here, we're talking about, you know, potential great decrease in cost. I'm just curious, how about the cost of district transportation? But this doesn't necessarily, this 1552 doesn't even accommodate for the decrease in cost when we talk about having an extra bus for hub delivery, correct? Or an extra bus base.
No.
Yeah. Okay. Just want to make sure.
Now, there's some areas of the district you just can't get to. I mean, there's spots that, like the Mayan Island, no school gets there. There's just spots in the district that no school gets to. But that's enough for me. Chris, you want to take?
Well, actually, about that particular thing, and now I'm having trouble finding it, and I'm trying to figure out my way around this.
As we think about busing, would it be possible to give us a map that just is exactly what Chris just said? All places that are more than 2 miles from any school?
No, that's in that set of questions at the end. They can do it for individual schools, but they can't, the way the software is set up, they can't say, draw us a map for all areas that are farther than 2 miles. That's the
I just
software.
done it by, you look at that Man, and then I look at Man, I look at Lincoln, I look, Chinook, and none of them get there.
So it would just take eyeballing it?
Yeah, that's what we came up with in the end.
I call it Sharpie, maybe.
And I thought about the old overheads, lay them on top of each other.
Okay, well, I'm not thinking of my question, so I can go on if you want to. Yeah, I mean, you all read the letter probably, so I'm going to get through the whole thing, but I'm still feeling like we are acting with insufficient information if we're going to do this 3.5 years before those schools are going to open. We are setting ourselves up for doing something and then having to be undone by the next board, and that is distracting. other things that maybe are more important. And, I don't know, maybe I'm alone, but I do look at the facilities master plan and think, well, I'm not so sure that's exactly what it should be. And, you know, if there's any chance we're gonna change the facilities master plan after getting updated enrollment projections, why would we do the redistricting before? Because it's gotta be tied to that and where the capacity is and all that. So, that's just where I'm coming from. I won't recite the whole thing.
So my suggestion would be this. Let's finish a scenario that's highly walkable, in capacity, or whatever. And if you want to propose, it's called do nothing or delay action, let's take that to the
Well,
public.
I mean, I do have some concerns about the scenario though, and I'd like to see some more numbers about how much that's going to do what we needed to do as far as decrowding those North Corridor schools. Because again, if you're filling Grant, if half the people you're putting there are coming from Lincoln, I mean, that school's not gonna have nearly the effect we would like it to have on decrowding the schools that we have up there. And you gotta think about it 4 years out, not right now. And so those things still do concern me, and I'm worried about taking kids from the school in Iowa City Elementary School, where we have space, and then choosing to send them up to the North Corridor, where we have space problems. So, I mean, I understand the logic, and certainly if, you know, I understand why the people live there would like to go to Grant. And I'm very open and probably leaning toward, even if they can't go there, to let them go after 6th grade. But, you know, again, after 6th grade, that's when it makes sense to kind of shift people in that direction, because that's where the capacity is, and this is where too many people are. And so, I keep thinking, well, you know, if it were me, my scenario would look a little different. And again, I just feel like it's going to take a while potentially to work through the different things we could do, and we still might end up saying, well, we don't have agreement on it yet, or we want to wait and see what the enrollment projections are. And in the meantime, we've delayed revisiting the secondary boundary decision that much longer. I really think we should get to that as soon as we can. And again, if I thought we were going to finish this process in the next 3 weeks, I would say let's finish it and then get to that. But now that I'm skeptical that we're going to finish it in the next 3 weeks, I feel like we should go straight to that.
I would posit that defining attendance zones is a critical step, piece of information to provide to the Jean Richter, who we just approved the contract to give us data in December of this year for an update on enrollment projections. If they don't have what our boundaries are, they don't know what our enrollment projections are for the boundaries, because they don't know what area they're talking about when they're talking about enrollment projections. Based on those enrollment projections, then if we need to change the facility master plan, we do it in that order. I don't think changing the facility master plan up front is advisable or even logical. I really don't.
Just keep in mind too, in 14 and 15, we heard from the public that they want a master plan. So they want a long-range plan, they want to run the facilities master plan. That's
Well, I'm
what-
not disagreeing with any of that. Again, to me, it makes more sense it's easier to meet the facilities master plan if you're not doing it 3.5 years out with information that's it's going to be 5 years old by the time the school's open.
But if we don't define attendance areas, and we ask them to provide us information.
Well, we have to still
information that
block
we
off
get-
some things we'd like information about, sure.
But let's flush out, again, I'd like to flush out this scenario. If you want to take forward a point of view that we delay, let's take that to the public and get input on it.
So you still want to do elementary first?
I would like to finish this exercise. To me, we're getting very close. There's some tweaks, and we could have a highly walkable, minimized busing that manages capacity and aligns with neighborhood choice. I think we're about one round away from delivering that.
I'm actually interested to see how some of our when we actually get a scenario, a true scenario, how that shakes out with regards to our barriers to learning that we've identified. I'm anxious to get to that stage of it.
And I see growth,
Yeah.
just knowing the lay of the land.
Yep.
If we're gonna be intrigued.
Certainly better than where we're at. That's my gut feeling on it. I'm interested to see that.
I don't know, I'm inclined to keep coming back to one of Phil's phrases about this, which is the moving target, which, you know, on the one hand, I agree, I see things settling here. On the other hand, I have to go along with Mr. Liebig to a certain extent about not knowing some things. Some of the numbers we've got here do not go hand in hand necessarily with the input.
You're looking at Penn, for example, about 1,000 people would like to go to Penn. You know, I mean, just with the sheer
Mass of what was going on up there, and that makes me worried, not so much that I would believe the number particularly, but the growth potential that may actually be estimable about North Liberty, you know, kind of freaks me out. I mean, you know, on the one hand, it would be possible to say, well, you know, we were talking about moving Grant. Shoot, you know. Are we looking at another? We're still looking at another North Elementary School.
Well, we're,
Grant 19 and another school even.
I would say as
after
we
that.
look down the road, we've got capacity issues on the northwest side and the southwest side that will be unresolved after we're done with the projects that we have in line right now. I
It's
mean,
actually it's tighter in the west than north.
I think maybe that, you know, it would make sense to think about adding something there before 2095. I don't think we should draw the district for it today, you know. At some point, I think it's too far out.
But I don't disagree that if you look at the enrollment projections we're going to get in December, then you start making decisions about what happens beyond the conclusion of this on the wall.
I'm thinking even before the conclusion of this, we might need to change some things, even what we see. We're talking about, what, 6, 7 years?
And I continue to worry about the junior highs. I mean, we could keep building toward Mercer Park there on the southeast side, you know, I mean, there's that school there for whatever happens on the east side, whether it gets bigger or stays the same. And we've got capacity of one junior high, you know, we're already anticipating building onto another one for the same reasons as we're trying to project the elementaries nowadays. I know I keep bringing it up, but yeah, but the junior high is making nervous.
So did anybody add up the junior high numbers? Because I took the time to add up the junior high numbers from these building blocks.
Okay, from the building blocks.
Right. For Man, Longfellow, Lincoln, Lemmy, Lucas, Hoover, East, Twain, Wood, and Shimmick. For junior high. Those would be feeders that go into Southeast Junior High.
Okay.
735. 735. That is almost 100 students less, well, 85 students less than they have right now at Southeast Junior High. That's a definite, when it comes to the swell that's currently there, because they're about 50 students over capacity right now.
And I added up the numbers for the secondary map, and that puts 748 students in Southeast Junior High.
We're actually talking the same kind of relief.
Yeah, just
Different means of getting there, but same type of relief. Certainly relief being a focus. It was hard for me to get to Northwest because there's not enough building blocks involving feeders that go into Northwest, but certainly North Central. It was around
I added up for all of them.
around 500 or so.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if we want to get into that, but I'll set that aside, because I think the larger question is still on the table.
I'd like to go at least one more cycle, try to flush this out, see where we're gonna go.
I would also say that one of the things going back to when I ran in 2013, significant number of individuals expressed concerns that the board never makes a decision, never moves forward. And in 2014, when we started talking about elementaries, and then started talking about, first started talking about the secondaries. The secondary said, wait until we do the elementaries. The elementaries in May of 2014, we got up right up to making decisions and maps, and then backed away. There was, again, significant frustration with community investing time and effort and then not making decisions. And I would say that now that we've had this really positive experience with people knocking on doors and talking to their neighbors with 70 different neighborhoods, and to not move ahead would be, or to change course would be a significant negative on us as an entity.
I think there's two lessons you can take from that, though. I mean, so the board went ahead with secondary feeders, and now we got 5 new board members. It's not clear whether we're on board for that plan. So that's the risk you run when you make a decision that far in advance and there's an election to do. So again, you'd be setting yourself up for that same thing happening a second time.
Well, I would argue that not making decisions is nearly as bad board behavior as trying to undo decisions.
Well, I mean, I just don't agree when you're talking about decisions that won't take effect for another 3.5 years.
That's how advanced planning is done. That's how long-term planning is done.
I don't
For
think
the
long-term
future.
planning is done without sufficient information about what we're gonna be looking at 3.5 years from now.
You don't think this was done?
Our enrollment projections, you know, I mean, we're gonna be much closer to the opening of those schools. We're gonna know more about what we need in the facilities man. I mean, I'm just repeating myself, but, you know, at some point, it's one thing to sort of project out what you're gonna build, but to draw the boundaries 3.5 years in advance, strikes me, is just asking for trouble.
I would argue the
Asking for having to
quicker,
do it
and I
again
said
is
this
something.
before, the quicker that you answer the boundary question, the quicker you start working on transition plans and having people able to talk to their families and know what happens in 2019.
Yeah,
It gives them a sense of surety about what's going to happen next.
You don't even know if you have the money to build those schools, or that school and those additions.
Anything else for tonight? You seem to be.
So my thought, oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
My thought would be that I'm in agreement with Levick on many of the points that he raises. For me, a major concern is the bond passage. And I feel like this last election showed us that there's a significant group in our community that does not agree with the closure of Hoover. And that had a large impact on the election. We have another election. And the reality is that I think if we want a bond to pass, we need to go back to the community and ask them. This is my opinion. Reasonable minds can disagree. Let's just recognize that reasonable minds can disagree. But my opinion is that we go back to the community and ask them what they want in that bond. I know that there was a process for this, but not everybody was in agreement, and I just don't want us to go through with all of this effort only to have the bond not pass and not be able to deliver on things. I'd rather address it up front and find out what it takes to make the bond pass, and just be realistic about it. I would agree with going straight to secondary would be my approach as well. The one caveat I would make is that for elementary changes that we would think need to be made sooner, perhaps make those in 2017 instead of waiting for 2019. if there are capacity concerns that need to be dealt with right away. The other concern I have that Chris raised as well is I still feel like we have not fully vetted many options that people are interested in, such as year-round schools, the potential for magnet schools, potential for sister schools, I mean, all kinds of alternative programming, that if we go ahead and draw boundaries, I hear what you're saying, right, about the community being frustrated with us not, with the board not making progress, but I think though, as a community member, prior to being on the board, one of my biggest frustrations was to have them go through the whole process only to end up in the same place. And I feel like that's where we're headed, because we haven't made these larger decisions yet. And if we then get a different group of people in the next election that really want these other things, then we're in the same place again, where we've gone through all of this.
You're
And
talking about magnet and year-round, those sister schools, that's what you're talking about?
Mhm.
I ran on it. Listen, I'm frustrated that we don't have magnet schools. I'm frustrated. We talked ad nauseum for 4 months when we were both candidates in 2013 about magnet schools. We've investigated it. Right now, we're in a holding pattern because of funding. And if we want to hold our breath until the funding
But there are
squares
other
itself
options
away.
other than magnet. I mean, year-round schools, we're waiting to hear about the cost on that. Paired schools is another option. There's a lot of our schools that are really close to each other, that there are things that could be done without a lot of busing. And it's not certainly the case for all of the entire district, but there are things that could be considered. And I don't know, I think those are larger questions that should be explored. Just my opinion.
I think to flush out the shortcut of 2007, which we almost need to finish the kind of scenario. So like, for example, how are we going to depressurize Horn? Or what can we do on another way?
And then make that change in 2017 before any more capacity opens up.
I think we have to flush out the option. Then we decide if we,
The problem is, it's one option. I mean, you're probably right that we're about one meeting away from fleshing out that option, but it's not necessarily the option that's gonna get 4 votes.
well, it's an A out, well, that's what we'll determine, right?
Well, I mean, I can tell you right now, I got a problem with that option, a couple problems with it, it's the option.
Let the debate begin. I say take it to the public and let's have the debate begin.
Steve, I have a question. If the governor stops hanging on to water quality, which, if in fantasy, he stops hanging on to water quality, the thing that I sensed was that both sides of the aisle were somewhat interested in discussing SAVE extension.
They're interested in it. The problem is it's a kind of a pawn right now in the middle of the process, and
Right.
so there's no conversation about it right now. They're looking at a couple other sources of revenue for water, but the governor is being very strategic about only carrying those
Of course.
sources through until 2029.
I just
So
want to
that
be
in
clear.
29 they can align those.
I just want to be clear, is that this is, slightly, I guess, unrelated, but it's related to the conversation here. If SAVE funding were extended,
Mhm.
how does that affect our ability to finish the facility master plan that's on this wall
Oh,
right now?
we finished that and have
And that's-
about $70 million in excess capacity.
Thank you.
The bond is greatly reduced.
Yeah, it's eliminated. I mean,
Negated.
yeah, we could eliminate the bond.
Can I ask a question first? So are you suggesting that despite, the input we've got from the community, that we go back to secondary, right? And pick up kind of where we left off a couple months ago when we stopped? When do you think that we would have that decision? I mean, I'm just trying to understand your
Secondary?
timeline. Yeah, I just
Oh,
want to
I
understand your
think we
timeline.
should finish secondary soon.
Okay, what's some,
I don't know, within a month, maybe.
so 2 meetings?
Well, maybe 3, 2, whatever we can do. But I mean, let's get going on it. One of the problems I'm having with where we are is I think we are close to developing this one option, but people might want other options, and for us to just sort of stop when we finish developing this one is gonna sort of, maybe unfairly give a momentum to that particular idea when other people might have other ideas they want to look at. When we do these other things, and again, I'd wait for we had better enrollment projections, but I'm not objecting to returning to the topic of elementary redistricting after we accomplish a few other things and get some better information. I still think it might be a mistake to adopt something before the bond, before we know if the funding, one way or another, has materialized. But I like the idea of hammering out a few options for the community to be talking about, especially as we do go into the bond election. I can imagine, the next set of board candidates, if we had a few options on the table, you could try to pin them down. Well, which one do you think we should do? Which would be really useful. I think the best way of getting community input is through the election.
Question. So, if we go back to secondary, and then we make a decision about secondary, and then we go back to elementary, if we're looking at, if some of our decision making is about equity and about barriers to learning, and we change the elementary boundaries, that's going to change the secondary boundaries, right? It's going to change those numbers. This is my dilemma. There is a significant amount of pressure that is mounting in our community about making a decision about something to do, especially with our secondary as well as our elementary. But our elementaries are feeding into our secondary. So to me, it seems backwards to keep doing this. That's not fair, folks. But we started this, just not me throwing you on the bus. We started this process because of you and a few other people saying, we should talk about this. And then to switch it back and go back and then say we're gonna go back again, how is that not any different than what past boards have done? And so I'm just trying to, my thing is whatever we put on the table, I'm willing to help work with it. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me to have gone this far in the process and we stop today and then tomorrow we're doing secondary. And then in a couple meetings, we come back to this. It just doesn't make a lot of sense.
No, I hear what you're saying. It's also true, though, if you do elementary first, then what you end up doing in secondary, you might wish you had done something different with elementary here, you might want to change it.
I think either way, we can make adjustments to whatever it is that we decide. But I think at some point, we need to figure out what are those barriers, because this is my thing. If I have to hear another Southeast teacher, parent, administrator stand up at this mic and complain and go on and on and on about only wanting so many % of low-income families in their school, I don't think I can take it. I really honestly don't think I can take it, because it's hurting a lot of people in our community. People are hurt by that. And so I'm thinking about not continuing to have people languish and not know what's going on. So we can figure out what that is. I don't know if the magic number is 50% low-income kids can go to our Southeast school, 40% low-income kids can go to our 20%. I don't know what that number is that's gonna make people happy. I really don't know. All I know is I want children to be in an environment that people want them to be in that space and they want kids to learn. I'm not saying that those folks don't, but what I'm saying is that rhetoric keeps rolling out, and that's disturbing for folks. People who live in my neighborhood and community, this is concerning for them, it's concerning for me. And so I would rather us, if we're already at this point, go ahead and figure out what these numbers are and figure out what those, because once we figure out the elementary numbers, we're going to be able to figure out with the current boundaries that are voted on, or previous ones, or whatever one we want to do, what those numbers will look like, so that those folks can get an answer, so either they can chill out or that we can come up with some other suggestion. But I just think stopping this in this process and bouncing over here, no, we don't know. We're never going to know all the answers. But I don't want to ever, if we'll be here all day, we'll be here for the next 10 years trying to get every single answer. Because I promise you, there's a lot of information that we can gather. There are barriers to the decisions that we're making now that's just causing all kinds of problems. I feel like I'm talking circularly right now, but I understand your point, I understand your viewpoint, I have an appreciation for it. But I really hate this middle of the road thing. We start going and then we stop and then we go back. And to me, this is really this all over again. This is you guys saying, oh, let's go this way, oh no, let's turn around. I mean, let's stay a course once,
Well, I
stay
hear
a
you,
course.
and I understand it, at the same time, and I confess, I am in a different place now than where I was 2 months ago about what we should do, because as
But
we
my
look at
thing
it more,
is that going to change in 2 months?
Well, I guess what I'm thinking is, I don't wanna stick with something just because, you know, I don't
But
wanna
my
get
thing
into
is, we
some
can
cost
change these
fallacy.
boundaries, but we need to at least figure out what they're gonna look like. My thing is, what's wrong with gathering information and figuring out what these scenarios look like? Because what my understanding is, and I could be completely wrong, is that we're gathering this, we're drawing this to see what it looks like. If it doesn't look right, we didn't vote on it, we can change it. But to just stop in the middle before we figure out what that information is gonna come back from the consultants is, that's crazy to me. Like, I really feel like, okay, let's figure out what that looks like, then we can make a decision. You know what, that doesn't look so right, maybe we need to change that. But to just stop in the middle of what we're doing and just going backwards, we could be on secondary boundaries for 6 months.
Well, you're right, we could be, I hope we wouldn't be.
I
but,
think we will.
You know, there's always gonna be kind of a.
But you were going
make a
back to your
decision,
point.
Redecide, make a decision, redecide, and which one you do first and which one you do second.
But you're going back
You're gonna have to
exactly to your
reevaluate.
point. You just said exactly what it is. We're gonna keep going back and forth. So my thing is, if we're already in the middle of the road and we're
Yeah,
treading
but-
water, let's go ahead and finish what it is on the other
Well,
side.
Liberty High is opening in 2017.
It is.
Grant and Hoover East are opening in 2019.
All right.
So, I mean, that's
I
me
get
as the
that.
ultimate driver, let's decide secondary.
that.
We've set
And
secondary.
I don't feel
Secondary
like
is
we're
set.
gonna decide.
It's disingenuous to say the secondary is not set. It is set.
It might change. We all know it might. I don't know what the vote's gonna be, but we do need to talk about it, and we might decide to change it. And if we don't, then fine, it's done.
Why aren't we running these in parallel, anyway?
Something.
I mean, we got.
Can we do two, can we do?
Well, that's been in parallel. I mean, Lori's provided some secondary
Right. Let's
scenarios.
do parallels and knock it out, because stopping in the middle of the road is ridiculous.
It raises the larger question of do we have to have a clean feeder or not?
Sure.
And I built into my building block or whatever was the assumption that we would not have a clean feeder. But I'm hearing here is that the assumption that there would be a clean feeder. So, you know, I think we're at different places on that.
So I'd rather spend more detailed time on finishing the elementary scenario and going through your secondary scenario than 8 pages of, you know, what I mean? Can we dial in the elementary scenario? Can we dial in your secondary scenario?
But when you say finish the elementary scenario, do you mean just finish this one, even if it doesn't get 4 votes? Or do you mean get 4 votes
We've
on
had
something?
how many months for people to provide their input and create other scenarios? So if you want other scenarios, go for it.
I mean, that could take a long time before we get to secondary values.
Maybe.
Just given the
I really
time,
do.
I'm wondering if we could hear from these two ones. I guess you said. On this one.
Well, I share many of the concerns over mine, I guess. On that, I'm still evolving through my process on it. On the elementary side, I know at the listening post at City High, there was a lot of discussion about sister schools and other things we really haven't kind of discussed in great detail or anything along those lines. Like I say, I'm working through it. I think we gotta have I think both discussions are very important, and one that finalizing on it is important for getting the scenarios and like I say, I align with what's been said on, I agree with a lot of what Chris says.
1 is table elementary redistricting, 2 is settle secondary boundaries, 3 is obtain updated enrollment projections. We know we're not gonna get those right away. So even after you do number 2, you can still spend some time talking about different scenarios. Personally, I'd be reluctant to settle on one before I had the enrollment projections, but, it doesn't mean we can't be talking about them, but it does seem like while we're talking about it, we're not talking about secondary, and, you know,
Because secondary's done.
you said that, but there's basically some
There's a
sentiment
6
for
to
changing
1 board
it.
decision.
Well, it's not
on
the same
secondary
board, there's
boundaries.
5 new board members.
That is
Must be-
terrible
if
board
we
behavior.
have another vote on
That
it-
is terrible
No, I
elected
don't
behavior
agree.
of any council, of
How can
absolute.
you say that? Of course, when the membership
That is
changes,
terrible.
policy can change.
Sure, but
That's
first-
what elections
All
are
that does is
for.
upset the apple cart for the fun of
Well, then
upsetting
what's
the
the
apple
point
cart.
of elections?
Chris, we voted on rescinding the boundaries.
Yeah, but I still think it might change.
Maybe-
What?
We voted to not do it at that moment because we wanted to do it.
We
elementary
voted to
first.
rescind the boundaries of Bill.
I know, because there was some sentiment, let's wait until we have an alternative in front of us.
Maybe, or
Well, maybe is the question, maybe, why don't we just settle it then?
I'm
You
just-
know, let's have this work session about that and get moving on it.
Well, but again, what we're working on
On
there.
what? Something that's
We're
done?
not though, we're just doing this. We're
It
not
seems-
really
it
spending
seems-
any of these
and
meetings
I don't
talking
want to
about
put words in
secondary
Director
boundaries.
Rotland's mouth, but what we're really talking here is an unclean feeder system versus a clean feeder system decision which has been made. What you're, correct me if I'm wrong, but what some of the Sharpie maps you provide are basically a secondary system, it's an unclean feeder system, right?
But
Yeah, because we could be at different places on it, but my thought would be that I've looked at it, I've thought about it, but I just find it's really hard to accomplish much balance on both elementary and secondary level with totally clean feeders without busing.
Well, yeah.
And I don't think we can afford that amount of busing.
when you get schools that are 500-600, you swing one of them, it's a huge swing, so.
So,
But
yeah.
this is what I'd propose next work session. Let's stop asking 10 bazillion questions. Let's hone in on the elementary scenario and the secondary scenario, and really spend quality time on it. I think part of, you know, we've done our own thing here. We asked Steve 10,000 questions and he's been answering them, but let's get into the scenario. I'd love to talk to your scenario more, but
Well, I want to ask, Natasha, this goes back to your point to some extent. You know, we're talking about a set of secondary boundaries for the purpose, not necessarily balancing enrollment, but essentially balancing FR. Yes, no?
it's all the above. I don't understand.
Well, because the other part, the elementary part, is somewhat different, especially if we take a look at the input again. The input for current Hoover is Hoover. And the current, we broke ground on a school last week, and the input is not much of anybody. You know, we're building a school there anyway. Not saying it couldn't happen, although the more I think about this stuff, the more I find, once again, that schools run the wrong places. But, we got no input from the south side, none. And that doesn't help. It doesn't help us a bit. Hoover wants to go to Hoover, the east side is static, the south side didn't provide any. 1,000 people want to go to Penn. Grant isn't even built yet, it's overflowing. That kind of decision is more geographical and enrollment projection based than the secondary one that was made, it seems to me, I mean, I wasn't on the board then, I just watched, some amount of enrollment projection, planning on that there'd be enough students going to a new high school in spite of its relatively odd location right now. And the complexities that go into not only the decision to build a new school, which was coming down the pike for years, but where to put it, who was involved in that, and how it happens, and what effect that has on the other two major schools. We ought to count Tate in anytime we're talking about high schools here. We don't all the time, but we should, even though population is variable a little bit, but it seems to me there's a collision of sorts here, and Natasha was addressing it to a certain extent politely. But one is, what's the larger community impact of a certain set of decisions? And then the other one is just, it has to do with the nuts and bolts and bricks and mortar and places where things are going and how much it's gonna cost. And they're intertwined, but the directions, as I see them, are not in tandem particularly. We could make it that way, certainly, and say, okay, we do secondary, fix it, it's fixed. And then the other thing's variable, but I don't see that elementary is not gonna be a moving target. And that we are gonna have to, or somebody will, have to continue to address these, the shifts in populations. And we can make good decisions. They're gonna be expensive busing decisions. There are some people who are, there are some people on this side of town who are ready to insist on balance no matter what the cost. And they're willing, that's what they say. And if sacrifices have to be made, they'll do it. I don't know, it's not up to them particularly. But, we were talking about asking for input again. Yeah, we can go around the block again, but it ought to be a different question than we asked before, because the input we got there, as I said several minutes ago, is somewhat contradictory to some extent from where we seem to be headed.
So we're at our 2-minute warning.
It's fine. Sorry.
Craig, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to comment on how I'd like to phrase, I know we're testing this theory, we can examine it. I'd like to comment on how we can phrase the discussion going forward, back to what Director Loach said about, in the previous meeting and again and tonight, about how comments about FRL can be hurtful. And I think that what we really need to focus on as we start to get numbers on ELL, special ed, and socioeconomic status of our student populations, I think we need to realize that what we're really talking about is the time and the ability to give time or to be involved that comes from parents and guardians that have more middle income or higher socioeconomic status. We really need to, I think, pay attention to not saying we want to cap, we want to limit the amount of low socioeconomic, but to really think about it as we are maximizing the involvement and the investment, the parents with resources to help all students succeed.
You're talking about secondary schools.
I'm talking about all of our schools. I'm talking about the discussion that is becoming hurtful to people. I hear what Director Deloach said, at least on a couple of occasions. What we are conveying sometimes when we have these discussions is that poor kids can't learn, and that's exactly.
We're making it sound like if you are low
Exactly.
income in this community, you are a weight to the school district.
And what we really need to be phrasing it as is is maximizing affluence rather than minimizing poverty.
I'm saying that we should be cautious about how we generalize people based on their income, is what I'm saying. Because people change income throughout their time, even in our district. You can go from a grad student getting this crazy job and you making lots of money, you know what I'm saying? And so I'm saying we need to be cautious about how that is rolled out. And we also need to be more aware, like some of our administrators are going through trauma and they're going through these different trainings. Those things all play into the different decisions that we're making. And what is important is, I understand what people are saying, that we want to be able to help our schools who have higher FRL. If we can bring that FRL down some, then we can be able to help people differently. And I understand that, but we also have to be cautious about not creating additional barriers for those families. And that's my own thing I've said this whole time. If we have the boundaries that we have, What have we done as a district to address the barriers that it has created from the vote that has been made? That is what I've said since day one. And so all I'm saying is, we as a board should be cautious about how we talk. Because y'all talk about my family, because I don't make a lot of money. So when y'all sitting around here and bad mouthing on low income families, my family might be like a check away from that. So I'm just gonna put that out
That's what I'm
there.
trying to caution, is that what we say we should be careful of, say, because words have meaning,
They
words
do.
have power, and where we know that being from a lower income household creates barriers, we also know that being from a more affluent income creates, unfortunately, opportunities. And I think that something you said a couple meetings ago really rang true with me. And I do not want somebody going home and saying, those board members, that discussion that they're having, being reported in the media, says that I can't learn because I'm low.
Because of my parents' income.
Exactly.
Which is,
And that's not the discussion.
my
The
thing is, I
discussion-
want us to go back to how do we help our children get to the point, regardless of their backgrounds, to all be higher achieving students. That is my whole
Right.
point. How do we address that? What resources, what do we need to do? Who do we need to move? What do we need to do so that our families who have children, despite their income, that their children have the opportunity to learn, and to learn without barriers or policy being put in place that's causing disparities in our district. That's my concern. And some of the language that we use, so the way that we put it out many times, whether we mean it in that way, it comes out of our mouth, and that's the thing that in the community is grinding people's stomach and grinding them to a halt, where people are feeling like if you're low income in Iowa City Community School District, you're a weight to the district and you're unwanted. I'm not saying that's what people mean, but that is the perception that comes across
I'm
many
just asking that
times.
as we go forward, that we try and
I just think we should
maximize
be-
the resources as far as
Maximizing resources, I mean, whatever language we need to use it, I just think we need to change the deficit-based discussion that we have
Right.
about low-income families. That's all, that's my whole
That
point.
violated
I ain't
the-
picking on nobody, I'm just saying.
So
You
We
were
need
trying
to
for
change
10.
that deficit-based
You're
language.
trying for 10, I know.
I'm done. I'll just clarify my point.
So agenda setting, the next work session will be the 26th. I suggest we do the board topic to the first meeting.
Say that again?
Work session on the 26th, we talked about a board topic, but it seems like we should put that in the first meeting.
Well, I'm happy to just continue this conversation at our next work session.
So I think let's get real focused on the scenarios.
I would say let's start talking about secondary boundaries. It's on our agenda every week, but we don't really talk about it.
How about this, we'll even start there.
Okay. Because, you know, we know that Liberty is gonna be there in 2017.
Flip the agenda.
More than we can say about some of the.
Okay. Anything else on agenda setting? Okay, motion adjourned.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? This meeting's adjourned. Thank you.